Hi there. In this video I'm going to address a topic that I'm asked about with increasing frequency, and that topic is growth mindset. Students often want to know three things about growth mindset. Firstly, well, what is it? Secondly, is there any evidence to support it? And thirdly, how can they use it to improve the way they go about studying? So in this video I'm going to briefly address all three of these questions. The term growth mindset and its counterpart, fixed mindset, was devised and popularised by the American psychologist Carol Dweck. And Carol basically postulated that for any given ability, we can look at it in one of two ways. We can take a fixed mindset approach where we view that ability as something which is invariant, something that we can't develop or cultivate or nurture or really improve significantly on. Or we can take a growth mindset where we view that ability as something that we can develop and nurture and cultivate and is subject to improvements with the right amount of patience, persistence and effort. Now, Carol proposed that the mindset that we take towards a particular ability, say the ability to learn for example, is going to have important implications for the way that we approach the development of that ability. So for example, if you think that the ability to learn is fixed, then you're probably not going to embrace many challenges when it comes to learning. Equally, you're probably not going to respond to obstacles in the path to your learning very positively. You're also probably not going to respond to criticism particularly well, and you're probably going to resent the achievements of others whom you may perceive as being just naturally better learners than you. In contrast, if you were to adopt the growth mindset view of learning, in which you could develop and cultivate the capacity to learn, then you're much more likely to embrace learning challenges. You're much less likely to be fazed by obstacles that might be in the way of your learning. You're probably going to respond to criticism and setback more positively. And you're probably going to enjoy and relish the achievements of others because you'll have no cause to resent them, because you can then aspire to their achievements because you believe fundamentally that learning is something that you can develop. You may have noticed that the concept of a growth mindset has become enormously popular, both within and outside of educational circles, and it's really not hard to see why. It's a very simple and intuitively pleasing and rather uplifting theoretical account of how the mindset we adopt can fundamentally affect our capacity to develop or not develop with respect to a particular ability. Of course, just because something is popular doesn't make it correct. And with respect to educational contexts, there are two main questions that have been asked of the concept of growth mindset. The first question is whether there is any educational attainment difference between students who adopt a fixed mindset compared to those that adopt a growth mindset. And the second question is whether there is any demonstrable effect of interventions that are designed to promote a growth mindset in students' academic attainment. Unfortunately, recent meta-analyses have revealed that the evidence for the growth mindset is not especially convincing with respect to these two key questions. In other words, it doesn't seem like there is a reliable difference between academic attainment in students who use a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. And there also doesn't appear to be consistent, reliable evidence to indicate that interventions that are designed to promote a growth mindset result in improved academic attainment. Now, this is not to say that there isn't any evidence to support the effectiveness of growth mindset, but rather that the evidence that has purported to support the idea of a growth mindset tends to be in the minority, and the effect sizes reported by studies that have claimed to have found an effect of growth mindset tend to be rather small. So does this mean we should dispense with the idea of growth mindset altogether? Well, I would argue that would be a bit premature for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that we're starting to understand now that the research that has been done on growth mindset has not always been ideal and hasn't standardised important things like measures of ability, measures of the mindset that a person is using. And even the interventions themselves have often been very, very different between studies. So there is a need to improve the quality and the standardisation of the research that's conducted in that domain before we can reach any really firm conclusions. But the second reason is that it's very likely that growth mindset is one of those necessary but insufficient conditions to improve the way that people go about learning. Now, when I refer to growth mindset as something that is likely to be a necessary but insufficient condition for improving learning, what I mean is that it's all well and good to believe that you can improve the way you go about learning. But whether that belief actually translates to improvements in learning is going to very much depend on the actions you take on the quest to improve the way that you learn. For example, the kind of study strategies that you employ in the process of learning. Indeed, recent research into beliefs about learning has indicated that the belief about learning is one of a series of factors that then go on to determine how well you'll do academically. Let's unpack this a bit. If you have, for example, a fixed mindset when it comes to your ability to learn, then it's very likely that you're going to adopt achievement goals that are centered around trying to avoid any kind of feedback that indicates that you might be performing suboptimally or failing. Because, well, according to your mindset, if you are failing or you are doing suboptimally, there's not a lot you can do about it. What that's going to mean is you're much less likely to go on to adopt study approaches that could possibly give you a message that you haven't got quite as firm grasp on the material you're studying as you might have thought. For example, retrieval practice, which is a real problem because we know retrieval practice works really well as an approach to studying. Now, in contrast, if you have a growth mindset, then your achievement goals are going to be based much more around this idea of mastery. And mastery is all about, potentially getting it wrong or performing suboptimally initially, but then getting feedback, using that feedback to improve and improving on that particular task in an iterative fashion. So in other words, you're not frightened of any messages that might indicate, well, you haven't quite got this yet. And that means that study approaches like retrieval practice are appealing to you. And again, because we know retrieval practice works really well, it's very likely that people that use this particular approach to studying are going to do better academically. So what's the take-home message when it comes to growth mindset? Well, I think the most important thing to realise is that it's not a silver bullet or a panacea when it comes to academic attainment. Whilst it's undoubtedly important to realise and appreciate that you can improve when it comes to the way you go about learning and the success you enjoy as a result of your efforts to learn, that's not going to be enough to bring about that success. What you'll need to do is to work on your metacognitive ability. That's to say, your knowledge of how effective learning works and your ability to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the approaches you're using to learn. Unlike growth mindset, there is a very well established and very consistently positive body of evidence that examines and validates the importance of appropriate metacognition in achieving good academic outcomes. So if you're going to focus your efforts on one thing when it comes to trying to improve your grades, I would suggest that you focus less on growth mindset and more on understanding how effective learning works and making sure that you're using approaches to studying that are really forcing you to evaluate the effectiveness of the way you go about the process of learning. I hope you found this video interesting. If so, please do hit the like button. If you're interested in learning more about how psychological research can help you study more effectively, then do subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications if you want to know when I post new content. Thanks very much.